Happy Friday. Welcome back to yet another Winked Unplugged. Conversations that we have about adulting and the challenges that we can have as we grow up. So I don't know whether I missed the beginning. I might say it again. I think I might have just started right now. So I just want to welcome everybody. It is Friday. It's the time when we do have conversations about adulting and the challenges that we face as adults. Things that we're not quite prepared when we grew up. Things that we thought, sorry, I make this a little bit higher. Things that we thought that life might be a little bit different. So today's challenge or adulting issue actually comes from a very dear friend of mine. And she messaged me, I want to say last week on Friday, and she said, Ruchika, are you thinking of doing one on negative self-talk? And she said, it's one of the things that I really suffer from. And she gave me such a sweet example. And she said, if we're supposed to meet friends in the park and all of a sudden friends says, you know what, we're not up to it anymore, I feel like they don't want to meet me, like they're trying to avoid me. And it might just be that the person is tired, they have different plans, but that's not how we perceive it. We internalize it and we make it feel like it is because of us, because we are not good enough, or they don't want to hang out with us, or they don't like us. And there's immediately this talk that begins in our head about our self-worth. Are we good enough? Are we enough? Are we worthy? And so today's conversation is about the relationship that we have with ourselves. As adults, even as children, so much of our life is about relationships. And as kids, we don't pay much cognizance to it, except with friendships, right? When your best friend is best friends with somebody else, it really hurts us. Or when you have, a crush on somebody and they don't have a crush back on you, it really bothers you. But relationships take a completely different dimension as we grow up. We're supposed to be mature in these relationships. We're supposed to, share but not get overly emotional. We're not supposed to be practical, and all of these do's and don'ts. And so much of our life is around relationships. Oh, this is I love being in a relationship with so-and-so, or they're such a good friend, or so-and-so is not such a great friend, or they hurt me so much. So much of our time is focused on relationships that we have on the outside. It could be family, friends, colleagues, bosses, and there are so many books written on all of them, right? How to navigate your boss's stuff, how to, be viewed as somebody who's very friendly in the workplace. How do you have a great relationship and marriage? How do you have a healthy relationship with your children and parents? And we don't spend as much time on the basis of all of these relationships, which is the relationship that we have with ourselves. Very rarely do we step back and say, okay, what is the relationship that I have with myself? Right? Because the relationship we have with ourselves truly dictates the relationship we have with everybody else. And if relationships with others are not working out, to a very large extent, there's something that's happening inside the relationship we have with ourselves that is not working. So today we're going to unpack that a little bit. It is a huge, huge topic, and I'm by no means a psychologist or psychiatrist. This is just observations that I've had from my own life and from people around, from teaching meditation. So I would love, if you have thoughts around this, I would love for you to just keep chatting in between. I can see that. So that would be really good. So one of the things that I was thinking about is the relationship we have with ourselves healthy? And when I say healthy, you might say, yes, I have a very healthy relationship. So before we go ahead and yes, I have a really healthy relationship, just a few things to think about. Right? Are you constantly comparing yourself with someone else? If you are, then the chances of you having a really healthy relationship is not very high, because you're comparing yourself, and when you are doing better, you feel good about yourself. When not, then you kind of shrink. So it is vis-a-vis someone else, right? Are you judgmental, both with yourself and with other people? And a lot of times when we have low self-esteem, or the relationship that we have with ourselves is not very strong, we will judge other people. And judging them and realizing they may not be so good makes us feel in a very subtle way good about ourselves. Right? So are we judging people, bringing them down in our own minds? Right? Are we open to feedback? If you're too open to feedback in terms of everything becomes your fault, just recognize there is an issue with your relationship with yourself. If you're very defensive and even a little bit of negative feedback comes as, oh my God, they're attacking me, they don't get me, just recognize there is an issue with the way you see yourself. So just look at some of these things, right? Are you judging yourself and other people? Are you, and also the other one, your self-talk. Is your self-talk with yourself very negative? Let's say you make a mistake. I make a lot of them. Is the first thing you tell yourself and start beating yourself, I'm like, Ruchika, that was so silly. How dumb, how this, how that. You know, I remember a friend of mine saying this to me once, and it really stayed with me. And she said, you know, Ruchika, if anybody heard the conversation I have with myself in my head, they would actually think I have an abusive relationship with myself. And because of the way she said it, I like stood up. I'm like, oh my God. And she's like, because I am so hard on myself. I'm constantly beating myself up on things that I could have, should have done differently, right? Said differently, thought differently, behaved differently. We're putting ourselves in a microscope constantly, each action, each behavior, each word, each thought, each feeling, and saying, oh my God, you should have done this differently. Oh my God, you should. We don't do that with other people, but we do that with ourselves. And when we're doing that with ourselves, we are fixating on the things that are negative. Do you sit ever and are proud of yourself? Oh my God, that was amazing. You know, that was a pit hole, you didn't fall in it. Not in a way of a boastful manner, not in a way of like, you know, again, comparing yourself and I'm better than somebody else. But recognizing, oh, that was good. Ah, that was smart. Right? Do you feel enough? A lot of times, most of us don't, right? A lot of the need to be famous, to achieve, to get praise is because we do not feel we're worthy. Because this internal critic is constantly beating us down. Can you imagine, you know, we don't realize it, but if you were married to somebody who was constantly beating you down, all your friends, family members, even you would say, you know what, this is not a healthy relationship at all. You should not be in that relationship. But the relationship that you have with somebody who's even closer than your significant other is the one that you have with yourself. And just notice, is this person constantly beating you down? Is this a critic magnifying everything that you're doing wrong? And you know, the prey and things that you do right, of course, that's meant to be. That's what you're supposed to do. So just again, go back and see, is there a critic in your mind, right? The constant negative self-talk. What happens when you're constantly criticizing yourself? You start shrinking. The relationship that you have with yourself becomes fearful. The relationship that you have with yourself is one of a parent and not a loving parent, a one that's very harsh and critical. And when that is the relationship you have with yourself, imagine how you show up with other people then. Then you are looking for outside validation to feel good about yourself. Or you're looking for outside praise to feel good about yourself. And when you don't get that, your world starts falling apart. You know, a lot of times you might see people who look really confident. In fact, might even be on the verge of overconfidence. Nothing affects them on the surface. Right? Or they have this, you know, aura of like, you know, I'm so cool, I'm so chill, I'm so great. Don't be fooled by that. A lot of times when you are on the other side, it is a compensation for something that is not working well inside. You know, a healthy relationship with yourself is not too confident or not underconfident. It's not boastful, and yet it's not meek. It's not the need to feel validated and not being affected by criticism. You're not seeking praise and you're not affected by criticism. You're doing something because you want to do it, not because the outside world is driving you to do that. You know, and something doesn't work right, you can actually see it for what it is, where other people are responsible for it and Are you comfortable in your skin? Or are you thinking in a future date when you have ticked all of these boxes of either achievement, the way you look, the way you show up, the amount you're liked, the number of Instagram followers that you have? When all of that is checked, then you will be comfortable in your skin. I promise you, if you're looking for a date in the future to be comfortable in your skin, the goalpost will only change. Right? So just, again, step back and see, what is your relationship with yourself? And it's okay, if you realize, oh my God, I'm doing all of these things, then don't go into judging yourself and saying, oh my God, I have such an unhealthy relationship with myself. I knew it. You're going to go down the spiral. First is recognition, just pure awareness without judgment. Because unless we know there is an issue, we don't even know how to address it. So first, is it healthy? And maybe in a lot of dimensions it's healthy, in a couple of dimensions it's not. Which are the dimensions it's not? And the next time your internal self-critic or internal talk starts going in that direction of beating you down on those dimensions, just pause with awareness. Just don't go there. Don't let the mind go there. And how do you not let your mind go there? Bring it to the moment, to the breath. Just take long, deep breaths in and out. Don't feed and put fuel in the fire of that story. And if a couple of times you realize, oh my God, you know what? The critic is so smart, it's kind of slipped through, it's fine. The moment you realize, pull back. There's so many years of this narrative that is there in our head. It'll take a little bit of time to unwind. So one, with awareness. Second, don't feed it. Right? If you find yourself going in that narrative, like the example of my friend who felt like, oh my God, these people don't like me, don't want to hang out with me. The moment the mind starts going there, pull it back. We don't know what the truth is. We don't need to go there. Pay attention to the breath, and then meditation. Because meditation helps unwire or rewire the mind. There are deep grooves of stories that we have. And what meditation does is starts covering the grooves that don't work for us and creates new pathways so that the mind can go in different ways. It's very difficult to change us just by thinking we should change, which is why we need these tools like the breath, like meditation, to actually start rewiring. But the first step is always awareness. Because once you put attention on, oh, this is not working for me, you're already 50% of the way there. Then the next is, okay, how do you change the behavior? How do you change the patterns? And it's okay. There's not, in my opinion, there are very few people who are on all dimensions of relationship with themselves, they're doing extremely well. There might be, 80% of the dimensions you're doing really well, and that's amazing. With the 2 dimensions, in 20% of the dimensions might be pulling you back, and that is what you're obsessing about. For some of us, we're doing really well in 50%. For some of us, 30%. Doesn't matter. Just look at the ones that are the toughest one for you right now. And we'll go step by step to kind of stepping back, recognizing, and then using the breath and the meditation to change the narrative that we have. If you look at it, most of us have just a handful of narratives, just a handful. And we keep going back to those narratives again and again and again and again. It's time we change some of those narratives if they're not working for us. Yeah? So I'm just going to pause over there and see if there are any questions. I see my mom there. Hey, Mom. She's saying it's a great topic. That coming from Mom is great. Any other questions on the relationship that you have with yourself? And often if relationships are not working with other people, instead of trying to fix them, see what's happening, how are you showing up, and what internal state is triggering the external state. Yeah. Okay. Are there any questions? Any thoughts? Anybody wants to share what their relationship with themselves is? I can tell you, mine often tends to be, it's for a long time been the critic that talks. And literally without breath and meditation, I don't know how I would have been able to distance myself from the critic and also soften the voice of the critic. So right now, most of the times the critic can be talking and I'm like, oh, crazy person talking, let them talk. I don't need to worry about them. And a lot of times it won't talk, but there are times when it becomes really loud, and I'm like, ooh, that hurt, and I'm doing that to myself. So I know it is a journey, and just be patient with yourself. What when we compare ourselves with others? It's great. Comparing ourselves with others often happens because, in some ways, that comparison either makes us feel good about ourselves or makes us feel bad about ourselves. I think we don't realize that we are all very, very, very unique. Just because we look like human beings and we're the same species doesn't mean we're the same. Mom is here, so I'm sure she'll identify with this. As a kid, my mom and my brother are both extroverts, I would say, and they're amazing conversationalists, right? And they can have a conversation with just about anybody and anyone, right? And they're such interesting storytellers that you are like completely drawn in. And as a kid, I would be amazed at how engaging they were in conversations with people and how entertained people were around them. And I always wished I would be one of them, right? And at a very subtle level, I was judging myself. Oh my God, they do it so well, I don't. Until many, many years later, I realized, if everybody's a great conversationalist, who's going to listen? You need listeners too. And recognizing that the world has created a really nice balance of what is needed. If there are people who are great storytellers, then there need to be people who are really great listeners who can absorb the storytelling. Otherwise, there won't be any fun. So just recognize that you might want a gift that somebody else has because you don't want it, but you're not paying any attention to the gifts that you have, and you're taking them for granted. So comparison in some ways robs us from seeing who we really are with the amazing gifts we have, and wants us to be like someone else. Or we look at people through the lens of the gifts that we have and feel very proud about ourselves, not recognizing, oh my God, other people have other gifts that we don't really have. So I think in some ways, it doesn't let us be completely comfortable in our skin. Everybody is unique. If you recognize that, we would stop comparing ourselves with other people. Such a great question. It can also inspire. Yes, it can. Definitely can inspire for a little bit, until we go back to feeling bad about ourselves, saying, hey, so-and-so is so great, and why am I not like that? So if you don't go there and stay at inspiration, and it's like, oh, I am learning from somebody, it's absolutely fine. But the moment it gets into comparison normally has this element of, oh, I'm here, somebody else is there, how are we doing? But looking at somebody and getting inspired is it's slightly nuanced, but it's different. Yeah, great question. I tend to compare myself with myself. That is fine. You can it's good to also look back and say, oh, so many years back, this is where I was getting tripped up, but today I'm not. And you can see how far you have come. Yeah, that's good. Very nice. So if there isn't anything else, have a great weekend. And definitely take a little bit of time, and normally this needs to be alone time, to just ponder and wonder on the relationship that you have with yourself. Okay, and be kind to yourself, be nurturing to yourself, be patient with yourself, because I promise you, if you can't be that with yourself, you can't be that authentically with anybody else. You might be doing all of that, but it might be to get certain kind of praise, recognition, whatever else from someone else. Okay? So on that, have a great weekend, and I will see you again next Friday. Bye.